General Manager Jim Nill adds some more hardware to his resume, where I was right and where I was wrong on this year's Dallas Stars season, and let's talk about the first two games of the Stanley Cup.
You're Locked On Stars, your daily podcast on the Dallas Stars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, Stars fans, and welcome back to another episode of Locked On Stars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. It's a pleasure to be with you. I'm Joey Erickson, forward producer of 105 Through the Fan. Please be sure to subscribe. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. And as always, thank you so much for making us a part of your day and making us your first listen. Happy Tuesday, Stars fans. I hope your week is getting off to a wonderful start. The Dallas Stars are still making headlines this season, and albeit not for the exact reasons we were all hoping for, but they are positive reasons, as General Manager Jim Nill once again has won the General Manager of the Year award in the NHL. I'll touch on that on today's episode. Also, where I was right and where I was wrong this season about the Dallas Stars. I made a few statements about 8-9 months ago, and we'll talk about the ones that came true and the ones where I was inevitably wrong. We'll also touch on the Stanley Cup in the first two games between the Edmonton Oilers and Florida Panthers. That series is getting nasty as the Florida Panthers won game 2 yesterday. They are now up 2-0 heading back to Edmonton. So a real curious start to the Stanley Cup Final. Plenty to get into on today's episode of Locked On Stars. As always, please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Never miss an episode. We'll be with you all off season long. Have some fun plans on deck, getting some special guests, talking about the draft as it gets closer, and all that good stuff as we prepare for another season of Stars hockey in a couple of months. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. So, of course, Jim Nill, the 2023-24 recipient of the Jim Gregory General Manager of the Year award, the second repeat winner since its inception in 2009 and 2010. Lou Lamoriello was the other general manager that won it in back-to-back years. As Jim Nill's Stars led the Western Conference with 113 points, their highest total since 98-99, and reached the conference finals for the third time in 5 seasons. And of course, he is very well respected throughout the league. Just seems to be one of the better human beings, especially with the stories you hear about him. And we're going to get into one of those by Josh Clark. It was put on DallasStars.com a few months ago, where he just talked about Jim Nill during the trade deadline. And there's also some quotes from him himself just about what it's like to kind of maneuver yourself around towards the trade deadline, making these deals. And of course, this year he added Chris Tanev, and we all know the wonderful work he did on that deal. Just a little voting breakdown for you if you're interested in that sort of thing. Jim Nill had 118 points. Second place was Patrick Alvin of Vancouver. He had 66 points. So Nill did himself pretty good in terms of the voting standards. He had 17 first-place votes, 8 second-place votes, and third 9-place votes. Third place was Bill Zito. He was the other finalist, of course, with Florida, and he's very deserving as well with what he's done over the past few years. Have to think about getting guys like Forsling and getting guys like Tkachuk and all the other components of that roster. Rodriguez, I mean, look at the game he had last night. Those are huge, huge pickups, and he's probably very, very deserving as well as the award. But congrats to Jim Nill for winning the General Manager Year of the Award in back-to-back years. I did want to touch on this article from Josh Clark on DallasStars.com. I really encourage you to go take a scroll at it or at least read the whole thing. I'm just going to pick some parts and pieces of it that I thought were really intriguing about trade deadline and what that's like. And he has a quote in here. It says, "I think it's important for people to understand the process. First of all, when you come out to training camp and start the season, you've got a projection of where your team is at. As the season goes on, you start to watch. Do you see some holes in your roster? Are there some injury situations where you might have to adjust something?" And I think that all came to its head in February of this season. And you look at what Dallas had gone through really from December to February. There was some turmoil in a lot of ways, even though Dallas continued to find ways to win and continue to stay within the top 2 of the Central Division, top 5 of the Western Conference for the entirety of the season. Miro missed about a month. Jake Ottinger missed about a month. February is when the defense took a big hit. Hakanpää took a lot of time off. Obviously, he was out since February and never made a reappearance in the playoffs. Dodonov took a leave. Also, Tyler Seguin, right? All these things started to compile. Look, we already knew where the Dallas Stars' weakness was. It was defense. They needed a top 4 plug-in right-handed defenseman to get them at least where they wanted to go. And one of the big names on the market, or at least on the block, was Chris Tanev. And he did a wonderful job of pursuing him and of course, having to find a way in order to make the money work as well. He had to find another team with retention. And he talked about the process as well. It can get chaotic. The last 2 days, you have to decide if you're in or out. Are you asking prices going up? Is it supply and demand? Are there not a lot of players available at the position you need? Maybe there's 3 or 4 teams looking for a defenseman, or 6 or 7 looking for a forward, or 2 or 3 looking for a goalie. You don't know. And of course, defensemen were pretty coveted at the trade deadline this year. Tanev, of course, had many suitors. His partner, or at least former teammate earlier in the year, in Nikita Zadorov, he was let go much earlier, but he said we had to do a retention, so we had to find a team to do it. You're only allowed 3 retentions, and you might have 12 teams that have already used up the retention. Now your numbers are limited. That's probably the most stressful part of it. You might have a deal done for the player, but until you can get another team involved to do retention and fit it under the cap, it doesn't matter, as we all know. And of course, New Jersey came in. Part of it was Calgary as well. And Dallas got a much better deal out of Chris Tanev than you would have thought previously. He also has a great quote at the end too, and I think just speaks to the type of man that he is. If you're and it says, "I remember the first time I was traded, I was devastated." Nill said, "I gave my whole heart and soul to the St. Louis Blues. I was drafted by the Blues, was playing for them, and all of a sudden you can get a phone call and you've been traded. You still have a job to do, and my job is to make the Dallas Stars better, but you need to understand that there's a personal side to it. They've got families. The kids are in school. Their wife may be expecting. Those things come into play." And you hear about all the wonderful stories about him as a person. And I think one came out a few months ago as well about how he picked up Chris Tanev at the airport along with his wife and kids, and drove them to their place that they would be staying in Dallas. And just those sort of things go a long way. And you talk about the culture, the locker room, and Dallas has had a wonderful culture over the past few years, and that helps with having leaders. And this team had 3 or 4 captains over the last 5 seasons with Joe Pavelski, Jamie Benn. Look, Tyler Seguin has made huge strides, and he's obviously a leader at this point in his career. Ryan Suter at one point was a captain, and that's just experience that goes a long way. And he's done a great job of mixing that with the younger guys like Logan Stankoven and Wyatt Johnston that have these model human beings that they can learn from night in, and day out in order to get to the ultimate goal. And it hasn't happened as of yet. Hopefully it happens soon. They obviously have a great roster, and they have all the pieces put into place to some degree. They need to fill in some holes, absolutely. But the one thing he has yet to do is bring the cup back home. And hopefully that will be the case here in the next few seasons. But he is a back-to-back award winner of the Jim Gregory General Manager of the Year award. Very, very deserving. Hopefully we're talking about some bigger hardware in the future. I think he would trade that in for a Stanley Cup. I know he mentioned last year the 3 general manager finalists. I want to say I can't remember who it was, the finalists, but all 3 teams were not in the Stanley Cup, and he looked over to them and said, "Well, we obviously didn't do a very good job if we're all here tonight." So yeah, you can take it that way if you want, but hey, that's the way it goes. That's the way it goes this time of year. Only 2 get to join the dance, and only 1 gets to come away with the hardware. Okay, let's segue into where I was right, where I was wrong. Made some pretty bold statements before the beginning of the year. Some of them flopped, some of them flourished. I'll tell you about them in just a moment. A lot of life is unpredictable, but a good life insurance plan gives your family a financial safety net to protect against some of the unknowns. Policy Genius is the country's leading online insurance marketplace. It makes choosing the right policy for your family easy and quick. With Policy Genius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million of coverage. Some options are 100% online and let you avoid unnecessary medical exams. Policy Genius helps you easily compare your options from America's top insurers in just a few clicks. Their award-winning agents can even walk you through the process step by step. Your work life insurance policy may not offer you enough protection for your family's needs. Even worse, it may not come with you if you leave your job. Policy Genius has no incentive to recommend one insurer over the other, so you can trust their guidance. Go ahead and get peace of mind by finding the right life insurance policy with Policy Genius. You have different needs from everybody else that you know, your friends, family even, and you have to make the right decision for you. So get peace of mind finding the right life insurance with Policy Genius. Head to policygenius.com or click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com. Where I was wrong and where I was right on the Dallas Stars in 2023-24. Made some statements, put some bold claims out there into the universe, and now we have a chance to recap them and talk about the ones that may have hit or the ones that have, of course, inevitably flopped on their face. I have plenty of both, but I went with 2 rights and 2 wrongs here in this segment, and we'll dive into some of those today. Where I was wrong, Jason Robertson. I was partially correct with him leading the team in scoring this season, but I completely overestimated the amount of points he would have. I said he would reach 115 points, and obviously that did not happen. He did lead the Stars in scoring with 80 points. He was 13 points separated from the second leading scorer, which was Joe Pavelski at 67. Just had 29 goals this season, 51 assists, 80 points in 82 games. He had 109 points a year prior, and I thought only upwards from here. And of course, that was not the case. He had a bit of a down year in goal scoring this season, but still a very, very effective player. And it would be nice for Jason Robertson to get back to that century point in points, because that means he's rolling and the Stars would certainly be rolling as well. So we begin with where I was wrong. Now, where I was right, and maybe this was out on a limb to some degree, but Wyatt Johnston leads the team in goals, and he absolutely did this season. 32 goals on the year, 26 of those were at even strength. Wait till he starts to get some more consistent power play time. We're talking about a future 40, maybe even 50 goal scorer for the Dallas Stars. I think he is so elite. He's a superstar, an emerging superstar in this game, but 32 goals for Wyatt Johnston led the Stars this season. He had 33 assists as well for 65 points. Had a bit of a breakout year and just his second season in the National Hockey League. And yeah, I think he's going to be a good one for a long time. So how about that? Wyatt Johnston leads the team in goals for the Dallas Stars in 2023-24. Where I was wrong, and this one is a bit more painful. I said Edmonton would win the Western Conference in the regular season. We all know, of course, Dallas won the Western Conference in the regular season. But I also put this little caption, little note on the end of it. I think Dallas is going to make a deeper run in the playoffs. And, well, they both met in the Western Conference Final. And we're not talking about the Stanley Cup Final, obviously, right now. So there we go. Completely wrong on that one. The Edmonton Oilers, of course, win the Western Conference, and they are the representative in the Stanley Cup Final. So the Stars did not indeed make a deeper run than the Edmonton Oilers in the playoffs this season. I did note, I thought they found their goaltender in Stuart Skinner, and it was a bit shaky there for a while throughout the regular season. Of course, the terrible start they got off to, but since November, they were one of the hotter teams in the league, and McDavid, Draisaitl have been having an incredible postseason, and the Stars got a front row seat to the McDavid Draisaitl show not too long ago. My final where I was right and where I was wrong. We'll finish this off with where I was right, so I feel a bit more positive heading into the next segment. I said the Stars would make the Western Conference Final. I was too much of a coward to say they would make it to the Stanley Cup Final, but I figured they would get back to the Western Conference Final, and that's where they found themselves, and they found themselves knocked out in 6 games in back-to-back years. So hopefully they can make the jump next year and get over the hump. They're starting to find themselves in the mix a lot more over the last 5 seasons, of course, making it to the conference finals in 3 out of the last 5 years. But now it's about getting over the hump. And I think we had a great conversation with Sam Nessler yesterday. Thanks for the feedback and support on that episode as usual. If you had not had a chance to go take a listen to it, please do. We got into some great stuff about Pete DeBoer. Number one, can Dallas get over the hump with Pete DeBoer? He's obviously had a great track record in getting his teams into the dance, so to speak, but there is a pattern, there is a trend of the offense and adjustments fizzling out when it really, really matters. And if we're here talking about the same thing next season, does Dallas need to have to start having the conversation? Do we need to move off of Pete DeBoer? Vegas moved off of him, and of course, they win the Stanley Cup the next season. And albeit some of the reasons for Pete DeBoer leaving weren't necessarily all him. They dealt with a lot of injuries, and some of that may have not been justified to put on him. But look, it's a business at the end of the day. Plus, you have to make tough decisions on players and coaches in this league if you want to get to where you desire. And unfortunately for him, the Vegas thought it was the right time for a change. And also, it's a lot easier to get rid of a bench boss than it is to trade away a player or trade away an asset. And in this league, with the revolving door of coaches, usually you can find a replacement rather quickly. So we had a great conversation. Please go check it out yesterday. Talk about free agency, of course, the draft a little bit, all the good stuff that we are preparing for in the next couple of weeks. So there I was, where I was right and where I was wrong. A quick recap. I was wrong on Jason Robertson making 115 points. Johnston leads the team in goals, where I was wrong. Edmonton wins the Western Conference. Stars make a deeper run. That, of course, did not transpire, but I was right on the Stars making the Western Conference Final for the second straight season. Okay, let's jump in, even though maybe painful. about the Stanley Cup Finals. The first two games have been pretty wild. Florida has won both. They lead the series 2-0, heading to Edmonton for Game 3, and we'll do that in just a moment. Today's episode of Locked On Stars is brought to you by FanDuel. Summertime means baseball, the NBA Finals, and more. You can bet it all on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you can use to bet everything from your Finals MVP to who is going to hit the one out of the park. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and add a big win to your summer bucket list. The Dallas Mavericks are heading back home for Game 3 against the Boston Celtics. Can they get back into the series? Edmonton is looking to get back into the series. You have baseball all over the place. Get in on the action this summer. Do not get left behind. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Add a big win to your summit bucket list. FanDuel.com/LockedOn. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. I wanted to share some quick and overall thoughts about the first two games of the Stanley Cup Final between the Edmonton Oilers and Florida Panthers, and especially the way Florida has sort of gone about their business in the first two games at home. They pick up a huge Game 2 victory yesterday, a 4-1 win. They outshot Edmonton 29-19 in the game. They were 1 for 6 on the power play. It wasn't particularly officiated that well, and these teams are getting after it. Coming out of an Edmonton Stars series that was pretty much non-existent in terms of shenanigans and terms of extracurriculars after the whistle, wasn't very nasty at all, something Dallas really needed to do. And then you get to Florida, who loves to play a pretty nasty, pretty dirty style of game. And both of these teams are going after it. And they're trying to fill each other in, trying to hit each other into next week, so to speak. And you see McDavid getting punished every time he has the puck. And when he gets into dirty areas, Tkachuk, Barkov, you name it, Bennett, is there to greet them. And that is something Dallas really missed an opportunity to do against the Oilers just a few weeks ago. I mean, there was none of that. There was just no pushback against McDavid. You look at Game 1 and you could go through your feed on Twitter, and 3 to 4 times, 4 instances, you could see McDavid just getting punished, albeit some of it is illegal and it's away from the puck. But those are the type of things you have to do against the world's best players. You have to find a way to get in their heads, or at least make them have to think twice about where they're going, especially in today's age where you don't have those enforcers and you don't really have those, guys that are protecting your star players a ton. One of the concerning things you can see a bit with Edmonton, not a whole lot of different players are stepping in to help out McDavid or protect him. So you have to find a way to get under their skin to some degree. I think Florida has done a great job of that in the first two games. I know they got outplayed in Game 1, but that's what great net minding gets you. And Sergei Bobrovsky is one of the best and elite netminders in the game, and he has been unreal in the first two games, and he's led them to a 2-0 series lead. Evan Rodriguez had a big game yesterday. A couple of goals for him, including that power play goal in the third period, which was huge to get them some insurance. But you look at the offensive production from Florida, guys like Mikkola scored the opening goal for Florida. Lundell with an assist. Tarasenko there is another ad for them. Rodriguez has been excellent. Lundell, another assist. Edmund Larson picks up a helper. Ekblad gets the empty netter, right? It's everybody's having an impact. And I think Florida is just the perfect example of a team that, of course, has some superstars. Tkachuk is amazing. Barkov, the best two-way player in the game, but everybody up and down their lineup fills a specific role and fills a specific need, and they do that to such a high level. And Paul Maurice deserves a ton of credit for that. He's had this team rolling and firing on all cylinders this season. And of course, in the postseason, it's just a team that is frankly built for this moment. And the more you watch them throughout the Stanley Cup playoffs, you get the feeling that this was the team this year. And who knows, Edmonton, of course, can have a shot to win a couple at home and make it interesting. But Edmonton is now tasked with winning 4 of 5. That is going to be extremely, extremely difficult. But what I'm really getting out of the series is, from a Stars perspective, they need to be way, way more physical. And I've hit that nail on the head multiple times already the last week. It will be really, really important for them to get some size back on their roster, and they need a little more grit, a little more nastiness. You need guys like Sam Bennett. He's tough as hell to play against, and he may be deemed as the nastiest player in the entire league, but you can't tell me that an opponent lighting up across from Sam Bennett isn't somewhat worried about what could transpire on the sheet in his 30 to 45 second shift. You have to have your head up. You have to have your head on a swivel. Those things matter. And Florida is proving that. I think most teams that make it to the Stanley Cup final prove that. They're big. They're nasty. They're not afraid to get involved. And Dallas just did not get involved enough against the Oilers. And let alone McDavid, just anybody in general. Jamie Benn seems to be the only one that wanted to impose his will physically. They need some other guys to lead in that department, because you have to be able to grind your way through and get over the hill. And we've seen it now in 2 straight years. The offense has fizzled up. You have to find a way to have an impact on the game if you're not going to score. And you're banged up, you're tired, mentally, physically exhausted, have to find a way to push through. That is one thing that we'll have to keep an eye on, keep tabs on as the season rolls along next season. And just can they continue to push through and battle? And they've done it through injuries and adversity. I'll give them that. But at this point, we're all waiting for the Western Conference Final. Can you get to the Stanley Cup Final once again? And those are the questions that have yet to be answered. And they have another crack at it next year. So we'll see how it all transpires. But those are just some of my very, very general thoughts on the first 2 games of the Stanley Cup Final. Florida with a 4-1 victory last night. Of course, shut out Edmonton 3-0. And I think that gave some Stars some solace, at least some Stars fans, knowing that Edmonton completely dominated and they lost because Dallas did it in Game 6 and came out on the wrong end. Okay, that'll wrap up today's episode of Locked On Stars. We'll have a special guest once again tomorrow on today's episode, so stick around for that. I think it will be coming out a little later in the afternoon. And yeah, we'll continue to talk up this offseason, talk about Stars decisions, draft, all that good stuff here in the next couple of weeks. That'll do it. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell. As always, please be sure to never miss an episode of Locked On Stars. And yeah, we'll continue to grind it out this offseason. We'll see you tomorrow. So long, Stars fans.